And we are live. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to a bonus perspective. It's a special episode of the podcast. Yes, it's a Friday night, and we're not playing video games, so we're going to talk about video games. So we are going to talk about probably one of the most controversial titles until Cyberpunk 2077 comes out, The Last of Us Part 2. There's been a lot of discussion. There's been a lot of complaining. There's been a lot of hate. There's been a lot of love. There's been a whole bunch of everything. So we're going to talk about our thoughts on this game and what we think it did well, what didn't do well, and et cetera, and et cetera. But before I get started, I will introduce the full panel that we have. Joining us from Windows Central, Android Central, and iMore, Mr. Samuel Tolbert.
Hey, everybody. Good to be here. Good to talk about this game in good company. Emphasis on the word good there. But I have a lot of thoughts. I've published some thoughts. I've shared some thoughts, but there's a lot I still haven't talked about. So let's dive in.
Absolutely. And also joining me from lordsofgaming.net, Mr. Jared Eden.
Well, how's it going, everybody? Thanks for tuning in. We got a lot about one single game to talk about this time. Not a bunch of topics, but just one. So I'm excited to dive in. It's been a hell of a journey and a hell of a game, so let's get going.
Absolutely. And also joining me from the beautiful land of Florida and the Basement Radio Arcade podcast, Mr. Eric Jackson.
Hey guys, I'm checking in from Ground Zero where we have little clickers running around now due to COVID-19. Florida's Ground Zero. I expect to see a rat king running around.
You know what the sad thing is like, when I played the original The Last of Us, I'm like, man, we as human species would come together in a better way over this. And after COVID-19, I'm like, no, screw it. We're all terrible. This is exactly how this would happen.
Yep. Just decide which faction you want to join. Just get that out of the way now. We'll just decide, who has the better insurance plan, benefits.
Me, myself, and I, that's the faction I'm going with.
Yeah, the Seraphites have a decent 401k.
Decent looting policies,
Yeah.
I'm really concerned about the dental insurance. Dental insurance is a big one for me.
Yeah. Interview went well, but it's like my interview with the Seraphites went well, but when I got to the whistling portion, I was out of it.
Yeah, I can't whistle, so you imagine he's over here. Whistle, dude. I can't.
Guys.
They're like, dude, we have a whole thing going, man. What are you doing? Sorry. Damn it, Eric.
Oh, jeez.
Damn it, Eric. We're supposed to whistle.
Oh, that's too good.
There was someone edited. There's a montage that I saw on YouTube, and it was people randomly editing different sound effects instead of the whistling. I definitely think anyone who's interested, go check out Scar's slide whistle compilation, Last of Us Part 2, and it's amazing. But so this game, let's talk about it. So we're going to go around in a circle, a little campfire, and we're going to talk about our overall thoughts about the game to start, to give you kind of an idea of where we're at with the game. And just general thoughts to start. And then we're going to dive into some gameplay, some audio, and some other stuff before we dive into the story, which, of course, is the meat and potatoes of this game. So we will start with Sam, because I think it's like a two-way tie between him and Eric being the biggest Last of Us fans on this show. So we'll start with Sam.
Okay, so before I begin, I'll just reiterate, if you're listening now or later on, Spoilercast, so obviously most of that's going to be related to the story, but from here on out, no holds barred. So you've been warned. You have your warning. There you go. Okay, so overall thoughts. The first 90%, the first 20 to 21 hours of this game was a heartbreaking journey that I will always remember, that I will always hold near to me, with some of the best writing, the best conversations, the best dialogue, the best graphics, the most intense gameplay I've ever seen, I've ever witnessed. It was just people say a roller coaster ride, and I don't disagree, but this was more like a steam engine that caught fire at some point and there was a point of no return. And it just derailed off the track, but in a beautiful fashion. The way it was amazing. The last 10% hollowed me out and left me feeling nothing, which I'll dive into more later. But I highly recommend it. In spite of that, I think. I don't. We'll get to that later. That's the best overview I can give right now.
Your first half was pretty convincing, just gotta say, for picking up the gameplay, because I gotta agree, it's pretty damn good.
All right, Eric.
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed this game. I don't think that's any secret. You guys have seen what I've said on Twitter. Do I think it's a perfect game? No, there are definitely some things that made me question certain things. One of them kind of at one point being the pacing, but we'll get more into that because someone gave me some different perspective on it. Even Alcoholic in particular, gave me some perspective on it in our Spoilercast last night. But overall, man, I think just this is one of those seminal games that you get, whether you love it, you're somewhere in the middle on it, or it didn't deliver for you. It is a game that has people talking, and for good reason. I mean, it's beautiful. The sound is just, like you said, you don't hear a lot of people talking about the sound, but man, you have to give props because talk about immersion and just every little attention to detail when it came to the soundtrack, to the score, to just the sounds you heard as you were going through the game, just phenomenal. The world itself just felt lived in. It just felt like what happens when human interaction is gone and how nature just starts to, reclaim Earth. It was just like haunting. There's so many areas, just like haunting areas that you go through, and you're like, what happened here? And it's just so. As far as like the story, yeah, like I said, there were certain aspects where I was kind of like, how do I feel about that? While certain parts just completely nailed it, like the tone and the feeling of The Last of Us. But ultimately, I think they delivered on what The Last of Us world means and what it is. It's a brutal, harsh place. It's not Lucky Charms and Fruit Loops, unless you found a box somewhere in that world. I don't know. But no, overall, I like that they took a chance, and it wasn't like, to me anyway, it didn't feel like what I expected, and I felt that was a kind of a good thing. But like I said, we'll dive more into it. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I would definitely recommend people check it out if you're the least bit curious about it. If you look at it and you say it's not a game for me, that's fair. I totally understand that. If you dove into it and you were like, no, it was too heavy, I had to get out. I understand that too. What I can't accept is someone who is not playing it, but they seem to have everything in the world to say about it.
Definitely.
I can't. It's not that I'm trying to be, like a dick or whatever and say I can't talk games with you, but it's really hard to deep dive and discuss things when you're judging it off of what someone else says. And I've had a lot of that going on. So yeah. But I would recommend it. I definitely say try it. You never know what that will feel like to you.
Absolutely. And Jared, your thoughts?
Well, it's definitely to me, I really enjoyed my experience through the game. Gameplay, the combat, the audio design, the music, the way the characters' relationships interact with each, like how they commingled and how they were built. There's a lot of factors that I really enjoyed about the game. And then to the point where I haven't started New Game Plus yet. I really want to start my New Game Plus. I don't want to do it too soon, not yet, because I think I'll end up doing New Game Plus, and probably New Game Plus 2, and New Game Plus 3. I'll end up pulling a Dark Souls thing where I'll end up not knowing exactly how many times I actually run through the game, because it really is just that enjoyable overall of a title. But kind of like with Sam, the last little bit I wasn't exactly very happy with, and I think overall the structure could have been a little bit more. And on another point, we'll dive deeper into it, but I think there were some potential other story avenues that they could have gone to where I know I should throw this out there now. The time it takes to play the game is appropriate. I don't think it's too long. I don't think it's too short. I think it's just right for what they aimed for the story. It was perfect. But At the same time, I kind of feel like it wanted to be longer, or it could have been longer, and there's some other aspects that they could have dived into to where it might have helped build more of a relationship between the player and the game itself. So, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, absolutely. And my thoughts are it was terrible. No, yeah, I'm kidding. I actually really I really enjoyed The Last of Us Part 2. I'll even say that I enjoyed it way more than the first game. More along the gameplay lines, because I've said this a million times on podcasts. I'll reiterate it again. Gameplay is king for me. It always will be. I can overlook plot holes and little aspects of storytelling if the gameplay loop is really addictive. And the stealth options, which should come as no surprise to anyone, was super addictive for me. Like, it took me so long to beat this game because I'd do an encounter and go, I could have done that better with less ammo. Let me do that again. And how dynamic the game was, how emotional some moments of the game were, and the beauty of them being that you could miss some of these moments as well. I really appreciated that from an art perspective, but maybe not necessarily as a player, if that makes any sense. Having completely optional things that are deeply emotionally telling about a character, but not having them be seeable by all players unless people explored the world is a really interesting risk-reward system. But since I combed through every inch of the game, I ended up getting the full story. I really like that level of storytelling. My only major complaint that I will throw in my overall thoughts is goddamn cooldown on the collectibles. Holy hell. I finished my save file. I was like, I have to have all these. Didn't get any trophies for all of them. I had 216 collectibles. 200! And it sounds like, yeah, there's like 280 collectibles. I'm like, how did I miss 70 of them?
Control says hello.
Yeah.
Or Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
No,
like all of a sudden, going through and finding 50 pieces of treasure as Nathan Drake now doesn't seem that bad. But
no, I didn't find all the cards and stuff, so this platinum run's gonna be fun.
If you guys need, I found a comprehensive guide. Sam actually has a great set of guides on Android Central, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Of a lot of stuff. I also have a comprehensive guide for every collectible step by step with a screenshot that I found. So shout out to whoever the hell made that, because damn. I'm going to go through and get the platinum for this game. There's no way I'm not going to have the platinum for this game by the end of this year. I might not replay it instantly because, like Jared said, I feel like if I replay it again, then I'll replay it again. I just don't got the time for that. So we're going to dive into the gameplay aspects because I feel like that's the most approachable subject about this game first. Man, the gameplay. The attention to detail that was in this game is amazing. Like, the original game back in 2013 did a lot of amazing things, but the amount of detail that was put into the gameplay, the first time I added a upgrade to a melee weapon and thunk someone in the head with a baseball bat, and you hear the skull crack and the person scream in anguish, I was like, I literally felt sick, but in a good way. It was really hard to explain because there's times where that attention to detail felt so cinematic and so perfect, and then there's certain times where that attention to detail just makes your stomach turn. And I just really appreciate that. I appreciate the bullet damage. Like having Ellie knocked off her feet by a shotgun blast in the chest is definitely top tier. Like, it's getting hit with a shotgun blast. I'm not getting up from that. I'm a 6'5" dude. Not expecting a 5'6" woman to be able to take a shotgun blast and keep walking. Being able to get knocked to the ground, then sit back up and fire. Phenomenal. Just the amount of gameplay options within the game was awesome. You could full out run at people with the shotgun, gore people if you wanted to, or you could sneak around and use people as meat shields, and just so many options. But I'll stop gushing about the stealth aspects of the game because I could go on for days. What about you guys? What were some? We'll talk highlights first. What were some of the highlights of the gameplay for you? Anybody, just jump in.
I liked, excuse me, like you said, that attention to detail. Like from the first game to this game, it definitely. I can see that they definitely listened to a lot of the feedback on how characters controlled the shooting, things like that. It was definitely better. Adding the prone was actually really cool. And like you said, like in combat, if you got knocked on your ass, that detail where you're like laying back is actually a combat move. Like you get knocked back, but it actually gives you a position where you can be prone and actually get a better shot. And it gives you like that next chance, like I can take this person down, get up and keep moving. And but I also like the fact too that like from the first game to this one, the first game you could kind of just rush people and kind of like hit them really quick and they were down. The enemies in this will kind of take that position where they would beat on you, they would shoot and start backing up on you. You couldn't just rush them and and get to them just like that. You move. Probably you'd like lose your life if you're trying to do that, which I did numerous times.
Yeah, but did you guys do that with the first enemy? You get the melee weapon and you're like, oh yeah, I could totally rush this guy. You run at him, he just fires the automatic pistol, the whole clip into you, and you're like,
he's backing up, which is what somebody would do. They just start back up off of you, which was really cool. Nick, I know like you were critical of the stealth from the first game, but I think they definitely they stepped that up in this game. Stealth felt really good, and most of my encounters I tried to go through as stealthily as possible until the game wasn't allowing you to do that anymore because there were just scenarios where you could not just get away with being stealthy all the time. But I really thought they stepped that up, and it was brutal, man, because talk about detail, like especially as Ellie is like you stab someone in the neck, and before it was kind of like a stab and she you put them down or whatever, she's stabbing and pulling down and like gutting out and I'm like, ooh, go Ellie. It was wild. So, but yeah, I thought combat-wise was really awesome.
Yeah. Sam, Jared?
Yeah, I mean, I can only echo, really, what Eric said, but the stealth gameplay here is so much better than the first. I mean, regardless of what you think about the story, the gameplay from this one is going to age so much better than the first game. The way you can go into prone, the way you can move through the short grass and the tall grass, there was so much thought and care put into how the AI reacts to you, how you can interact with them, the hidden like animations, the depth to the melee kills. And like how many different melee combat options there are and how you have to dodge around. Like there's so much attention to detail, and it's not a lot of big stuff apart from going prone. It's a lot of small improvements that all mesh together and form this really cohesive, okay, this is what the first game was trying to do type environment. Like I love the first game. I've defended it to the ends of the earth, but you spend an awful lot of time, especially in Boston, just sneaking around choking people out. Okay, like you do. That's what you do. This one, like, no, it's not like that at all. I think the pacing with it's also like the weapon upgrades and ammunition is done a lot more reasonably. Not always, but 9 times out of 10, if an enemy is shooting at you, they have 1 bullet left in their gun, which I found a little more realistic. Like, okay, they probably didn't mysteriously run out of ammo the moment you killed them. That was always something that bugged me about the first game. So I like that here. I think also this game, as a general rule of thumb, has a lot more interesting scenarios where like the dynamics of the enemies it throws your way. The first game, I can probably remember off the top of my head 3 or 4 like combat scenarios without like in terms of complicated setups that I really like. I can probably remember 3 or 4 off the top of my head and then more if I think on it. This one, there are so many unique setups where you don't always have the advantage, kind of like Eric was talking about. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you come into it with stealth, but you don't always have the advantage. You are often put on the back foot, and I think that's interesting because it really forces you to improvise. Much more than the first game, I found myself going, okay, please, for the love of God, maybe there's a rag in this house and I can make a Molotov cocktail and I can throw a rock or a bottle or whatever to throw that dog off my scent. And then I can move over here and then find something else and keep on going. I found myself improvising a lot more in this game, and that's something that I really liked.
Yeah, I agree with that. and you kind of thought out your scenario, like, okay, how do I want to handle this one? What do I have left? Like, you really check your inventory more often. Like, okay, what do I got? Okay,
Yep, exactly.
I'm going to put some Molotovs together here. I'm going to stick this bomb here. I'm going to lure them over here. And we're still seeing things that people are sharing, like, like Sunni, I didn't even know you could throw a runner into a clicker. I know you could do it with humans, but I'm like, I didn't know you could do that.
Yep. Yeah.
And if you time it right, you can dive off something and stab someone. I didn't know that. I'm like, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Sunni's been breaking games and making people go, wow. Like his Devil May Cry clips. I'm just like, okay, I just suck at video games. Uninstall.
It's like Child Wonder.
Yeah. Jared, what about yourself? Because you're very much a gameplay oriented fellow like myself. So
I pretty much have the same sentiments. It's a fantastic gameplay. There's not even a loop because there's so much variety to it. But it's what I like about this gameplay is that they seem to take into consideration what might happen in life. Okay, right? So what would happen if you were in that person's shoes in that situation, and how would you as a person take out that combat scenario? Now, with most games, we're used to having a very structured combat scenario to where only certain outcomes can happen, but they've implemented so much variety in gameplay and combat mechanics to where, or like a combat animation, to where the outcomes are a lot. There's a lot of ways you can figure out how to overcome a certain scenario, defeat a certain enemy, or just get by as stealthily as you can before it ends up turning into a complete crap show. But I honestly admire that aspect because there's back to the game. There's still a lot of things I didn't really think to consider I could do when it in The Last of Us Part 2 for combating an enemy. Like, I didn't realize I could use another person as a body shield against a clicker sort of thing, or I didn't honestly think even trying to do a running jump attack off a ledge onto an enemy on a lower level so I could basically just kill him in one hit while I'm in a giant firefight at the same time too. It's just like, oh, I didn't know I could actually do that. I wasn't told I could do that, but that's something that you as a player are allowed to figure out on your own. And that's something, it's the small discoveries of combat and gameplay that really allow a player to have those small moments of excitement that allow them to attach the player that much more to a game. So I think that's a really smart thing to do, and I hope that continues forward because it's nice, it's refreshing, and it's brutal. It is not. What they did was not easy. It was not simple. It was a fantastic thing that they added into The Last of Us 2, and as many as the brutal, as heavy as brutal as it is, it's fantastic.
I like too that they added the sneak attacks on the at the workbench.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. The first time that happened, that took me by surprise. That took me by surprise because, again, this is a criticism applicable to a lot of games from the last generation, but The Last of Us was no exception. You can look at an environment and tell if you're going to get attacked. Like, you can look and see, okay, there's cover, or, oh, there's no cover. Like, you can tell. This one, They play around with that. They trick you into thinking, oh, a workbench, I'm perfectly safe. Right. And I have not had anyone else that this happened to. As far as I'm aware, I'm the only one. I know about the workbench attack you're referring to, Eric, but early on at the gas station workbench in like LE Day 1, I was there. I was just doing an upgrade to my shotgun or my rifle or whatever, and then all of a sudden I hear an enemy patrol come by. They start walking nearby, and Ellie goes, "Oh crap!" And then I have to hurry up and back out of that. I was like, that was really cool. It was a mild thing. It was a very small thing, but the fact that you lull me into this false sense of security, thinking, hey, you can scavenge resources here. It's a workbench. Workbenches have always been safe, and then that's when an enemy patrol starts coming by. I don't know. I thought that was really cool. It's something that stuck with me since I finished the game.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, no, that workbench jump where you get choked. Oh my God! It was 2:30 in the morning. I screamed like a small child. I was just sitting there. I was like going through upgrades. I'm like, what am I going to use? All of a sudden, I'm yanked out of that screen, and it's like mash square, and I'm like,
It's like, where's square?
yeah. No, and like something you guys were talking about that I really want to reiterate on is approaching different scenarios differently. I got to near the end of the game where you're doing the last compound. And I always sit there, I'm like, I have to spoiler alert on this, but this is a spoiler cast. I'm allowed to say this. So I'm at the last compound, where you've got, you're trying to infiltrate the main building. You've got like the two pools. It's got empty pools. It's got just infected, chained up.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there. I kill two of the guys on the outside. See all these helmeted guys. I'm like, okay, inventory check. I have no crafting material. I have one explosive barrel, and I've got 3 bullets. And there's 12 of them. Oh. So,
like John McClane in Die Hard.
Literally sitting there like, okay, break out the infected with the 1 bullet, sprint run with the infected, trying not to like running far enough behind them that the AI doesn't trigger to come after me, use them as meat shields to pop one guy to get a shotgun shell off of him, to then run to reload the shotgun in a corner, to then sprint. It was just like this whole fiasco to take out 20 people with 3 bullets. And at the end of it, you're sitting there, you're like out of med kits, your health's like this far, and you're sitting there, you're breathing, you're like, yeah, I'm fine. And then out of nowhere, someone shoots you and you die. You're like, oh. I will say that since I'm going to include this in the difficulty or in terms of gameplay talk, that final compound difficulty spike on hard was real. I just all of a sudden it was like, oh, I can get through this. And then I cakewalked through the game for 90% of it. But I spent like 4 hours on that final compound with like 3 bullets going, this sucks.
Yeah, it's got a design to it that it's built for that. It's built for you are not hiding anywhere.
Well, it's not even the hiding aspect. Is I felt they choked off my ammo, especially in that section. Because it was like, oh,
movement. You got to keep going and figure out, okay, what about... Okay, get the, like you said, get the infected, and now all I have left is this bottle, and damn it, here we go.
Yeah, yeah, like they're saying they're like, here's an SMG with a silencer on it, but you're never gonna find ammo for it.
Nick, I'm gonna blow your mind here. You don't have to use a bullet to let the infected out. If you sneak up behind the infected, you can unhook their chains manually, and you don't have to spend a bullet.
That's what I did every single time. I snuck up, stealthed in. I was like, oh, this is great. I know exactly what's up for. I snuck in. I was like,
at first I'm like, it has to be a better way. I was like, I'm gonna have the ammo for these guys,
You know what? The worst part of that is like Eric said, the first time I tried it, I felt like this is why I don't stream, is because I sat there and I used my last 3 bullets, going, why was this great? I just gave up. I went before I reloaded my save. I just threw a bottle at it. And I'm like, do something.
In regards to ammo, though, I do like how there's a lot of situations myself that I encountered, though, where I didn't realize I was going into a combat scenario, and I was going in and be like, I got 3 rounds and 3 different weapons, but that's 1 round each. I'm screwed. And then later on, you happen upon a bunch more ammo and get to a situation where you're like, oh yeah, I can use it willy-nilly. And then there's a situation after you're screwed. I kind of like that. It's not consistent with ammo. You have to make sure you manage things out correctly. It's nice.
Yeah. Definitely makes you think about.
Yeah, and the game forces you. The game forces you at some points into combat scenarios where it's like, oh, you want to be stealthy? No, here's 20 guys, figure it out, and you're like,
okay, I'll go back. I love that fun guy.
I love those moments of desperation where you're saying to yourself, man, I haven't run across any Scotch tape.
Okay, it's not me. It's not just me, right? Scotch tape is way rarer in this.
It is, man. I was like, right, where's the tape?
Yeah, I'm like, I got the bandages.
Right, I got
the alcohol.
You're right. There was a point I hit in the game where I don't know if it was just like, it was near the middle section of the game with Ellie, and I could not find ammo anywhere, and all I had was a brick, and I started calling the brick Bricky. And I was wandering around with him going, all right, Bricky, we're gonna sneak around here and choke this guy out, and then we're gonna hope he has ammo. And if he doesn't have ammo, we're gonna go choke that person out. My wife's looking at me like I'm psychotic because I'm talking to a brick in a video game. But the gameplay loop was so addictive to me, so much more addictive than the first game. I just really want to give Naughty Dog credit, because prior to this game, I think even just a few episodes before the game released, I was like, I hope to God they do something with the gameplay, because I don't want to cut and paste of what they've done before. And I think they did an absolutely brilliant job with that. Now we're going to slide this into the audio design of the game. I'm going to segue this as a compliment to the AI and the voice acting. I'm not talking about the voice acting from the lead characters. I'm talking about just your average Joe character AI interactions, because the interactions between people that you ended up killing, or NPCs, if you will, was really well done, because it was the first time where I really felt like you were dealing with humans, but you were dealing with humans. You know what I mean? Like when a patrol separates and you kill a guy and someone's like, Sam, are you there? It's like, that's realistic, because you're not going to sit there with a patrol of 18 guys and then you're the last one. You're like, where'd everybody go?
Yeah.
Like, that's not going to happen. The fact that they check in with each other, or if you kill someone, if someone's talking on a radio and you kill them and they go radio silent, it alerts everyone. I love that. I love that attention to detail. That's something, if they made a modern Splinter Cell game, I'd want that attention to detail.
Splinter Cell is on the money. A modern Splinter Cell could learn a lot from this game and what it
absolutely does. And I really want to give credit, because I know like everyone did amazing voice acting performances. There was no terrible performance in this game. But I really want to give a shout out to the NPCs for selling it, because whoever did their guttural screams is on the first time they were like, here's a shotgun. I'm like, ooh. I shot some guy in the legs. I blew his legs off and he's crawling, screaming. I'm like, I'm a terrible human being. And like the fact that when you do that and then the NPC beside him starts making like retching noises, or is like, oh God. And it's like, yeah, that's a realistic reaction. And that immerses you in the game more, is the fact that it's not just one guy that they voice acted 40 times to voice every NPC. Every NPC felt different. Like you never felt like you were killing the same person twice. And I really like that attention to detail in terms of like the sound design and voice acting quality.
Yeah, which is actually pretty smart, if I can kind of piggyback what you just said there. Like, it didn't feel like you were killing the same person twice, even though they did use some of the same, body. I mean, that's part for the course, but changing up the audio cues. And I know Jared talked about this once, but I did the same thing. I blew someone up, and just their meat chunks hit the ceiling, and then you kind of get a reaction from like the other, like people like, oh my God, like what? Like, yeah, I did that.
Yeah, okay, so I will admit, you're right, Nick. I'm not disagreeing with you that like it gave them a very human, realistic interaction. I will say, at a certain point, this horrifying switch just went off. Ooh, thank you. In my head, and it made me start laughing at their misfortune almost. So, so some fool comes around the corner, because there's a bunch of them all patrolling, or they've seen me or whatever, and I just take his head off with a shotgun. His body slumps to the ground. They're like, Daniel! I'm like, oh, Daniel's gone.
He ain't here anymore.
Yeah, you know what? I have to agree with that, because the first couple of hours was this very visceral and human experience, and then by like 20 hours into the game, I'm like stealth throwing Molotovs at people that are just standing still, being like, watch them burn. I don't know about you. Were any of you like finding yourself being more brutal at the longer the game got on? Like at first I was trying to be clean, efficient, silenced headshot here, choke him out, kill him here, shiv him, not shiv, but, using always switchblade. Although you do use shivs later as Abby, but you know what I mean? And then later towards the end, I'm like, you know what? Screw this. Shoot this guy in the leg with a shotgun. That guy's getting an exploding arrow in the face. I'm literally throwing a grenade in your face. Like, I don't know. That maybe it's just me, but I definitely found myself just trying to be more brutal
as time.
The most terrible thing that I did consistently was along that lines. I'd stealth kill everyone except for one guy. So then he'd be like panicked looking for everyone. And I would get behind him, be about 10 meters behind him, pull out the two-handed fire axe and sprint run at him. That did turn out horribly because I did at one point run at a dude and he just shotgunned me in one shot and killed me. And I went, oh, that went bad. But yeah, I agree.
Something I kind of like too, when you talk about like the realism of things, it's like in the first game, if you threw a Molotov, it kind of caught everybody and it was like a blaze, right? Everyone was burning. Mm-hmm. Kind of caught them a certain way. One person caught the worst of it, they were gone, but the other person's like, like trying to pat it out. And I'm like, damn it. And you run in.
Yeah. Molotovs are still great. Like Molotovs are still super effective, but they aren't the it just clears the room thing they used to.
Right.
If you catch them, and I'm sorry, Eric, I'm laughing because your face when you were doing that was great. I'm never going to get that out of my head. That was too good.
But I did like the fact that if they were like on fire and that the person kind of still ran toward them, it would still catch them. And they're like,
oh yeah. That's the infected. The infected much more than the humans. Like if you lured them in, you could still catch a bunch of them on fire and it would kill them. But even the infected, sometimes one Molotov wouldn't be enough. Sometimes like a clicker would get burned and you'd see their skin turn all crispy, but like they're still coming for you. They're still going.
Made that mistake a few times in the situation. Like, oh sweet, I gather them in the center, throw one Molotov, expecting the three clickers and a couple runners should die. No, the true one runner dies. The second runner's, pretty damaged, but the three clickers are just really pissed off now, and they end up usually finding me, or I have to break it up to the actual comment and go, yeah, this is not what it used to be.
Yeah. No. I found it was harder to catch stalkers with the Molotov than anything.
Okay. We're in gameplay. Let's just talk about them. Holy crap, the stalkers in this game.
Annoying and creepy.
They go from being like, there's maybe a dozen of them in the original game. In two spots, under the basement of the hotel that's flooded, and then the tunnels later on, the tunnel community that's been infected that you find. In this game, there's more stalkers in one building than there is in the entirety of the first game, and they are nasty.
Oh, and shout out to them being stuck in the wall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're like,
not expect that.
You're like, room's clear. And they're like, rah.
No, you know what? I got to the point where I was like, nope, bang. Okay, that was dead.
I did every single one I saw.
Clearing them.
Every single one that was stuck and molded into the wall.
I got to the point that I was so dead.
I don't trust you.
Yeah, I got to the point where I wouldn't even use the pistol. I'll just pull out the flamethrower and torch the wall.
Like we're gonna exterminate right now.
Yeah. This is a
another to slide it back into audio design. I thought the clicker and particularly I think bloater audio design. Who was ever in charge of that, give that man a raise, because the clicker sound was very much more deep in this one. Like I felt it in my spine more than I felt it in my ears.
More guttural for real.
Yeah, and
you almost like you felt for them. Like you can understand why somebody's like, no, I'm not doing this. And they're like, I'm gone.
Yeah,
because it was so just seeing how tortured they are, and you hear that guttural noise, and they're just, oh man. And
it reminds you that they're not dead. Yeah. There's a human being in there that has lost their mind and been twisted and corrupted and just taken over. It's and the noise the shamblers make, that like heavy wet breathing.
Man,
they weren't difficult to deal with.
Right.
I'll be honest. I think they look and sound worse than they are. I actually found shamblers very easy to deal with personally, but the noise is just unsettling. It's just like it's this heavy, overweight, labored breathing.
Yeah,
it is just The audio design in this game is masterclass.
And I like that they came through the wall. Like, you think you could get away from them just by cutting through, and then they come right through the wall after you and stuff.
Yeah.
So they could be when you could really find trouble to deal with when you have a room full of things going on. You have stalkers, you have runners, and it's like, man,
the stalker runner combo, it gets really out of hand really quickly because you spend more time running and being like,
right. And then you run right behind, and it's like, oh, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, like the overall sound design really lent itself more, because I wrote a retrospective piece, look back on the original Last of Us. I said that one of the things I really highlight was if you played the game on easy or normal, it felt like a very like action movie style game. And then when you play it on harder difficulties, it's much more of a survival horror game. Didn't matter what difficulty you played this game on, the survival horror elements drove into your head. It wasn't based on the gameplay alone anymore. It was just the events of how things happened and how moments transpired. And like you're sitting there, you got your one shotgun shell, you're leaning up against the wall, and all you can hear is clickers, and you're like, I don't got enough ammo for this. And just like just hearing like hordes of infected moving around a building, and you're like, okay, so if I go here and if I sneak over here, will I be safe? And as they get closer to you and interact with you, it's so real. It's so well done. And like, if Naughty Dog is looking for something to do after this, do a just straight up survival horror game next, because I'm here for it 100%.
I'm down for that one.
So is story up next? Because if it is, then there's one thing I want to talk about first.
There's one I want to talk about. We'll slide music into the because there's some musical moments within the game. We'll talk about that story in story time. But Sam, go ahead.
Okay, so I think this fits more in gameplay. That's why I wanted to bring it up now.
Okay, yeah.
Holy crap, the Rat King. Good God. This game is full Resident Evil.
Yeah,
like
unexpected for sure.
No, I hate you guys. I haven't been on a podcast with you guys since last week. We're recording an episode, and they're like, "Where are you at?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm here." They're like, "Have you made it to the hospital yet?" I'm like, "I've done a couple of flashbacks with Abby in the hospital." They're like, "No, you'll know." So I'm sitting there and I'm doing this stuff with Abby, and it's like, "Oh, there's a couple clickers here, there's a couple of things there," and I start finding lots of ammo, and I'm like, I don't like this. I don't like this at all. And she's like, "Whoa, that was made by something big." I'm like, "Oh no, we ain't having our nemesis moment in this game, fam. We ain't having this moment." And that thing came out, and it had like 7 different monsters coming out of each end. It was like a ball of garbage with clickers in it. And I'm like,
and they set that up so nicely, because it was like, you know how they sold it was like this was ground zero.
Right? Yeah.
When things broke out and they didn't know what they were dealing with, so they just decided to shut this wing off. So it's been in there.
Just stack all the bodies up.
Yeah, it's been in there for years, just becoming this thing. And I love how the fact they play it up too, because you go to that door and you just hear like that growl, and you're like, I don't know what's on the other side of that door.
It's free to stay there. It's like, we got this door and it's between us. Right. That's great.
It's like,
yeah. I have to admit, like, when it was like, she's like, "Oh, I don't want to deal with what's in there." I'm like, God, in 15 minutes, we're going to have to, because that's fucking a big old heap of foreshadowing.
Yeah, but also shout out to Naughty Dog for making it so realistic, right? Because they've already set up the life cycle of the infected and how they work. And the shamblers are sort of like devolved bloaters that have been exposed to water or some freak mutation, whatever. And that's fine. But then they figured out a way to make a big boss fight by like, hey, what happens in nature? Sometimes in nature, these scurrying creatures get stuck together. And instead of dying, very occasionally, they grow together and they, fuse. Like, look up the Rat King phenomena. It's freaky, but it is a weird thing. It has happened.
Right.
A bunch of rats all with their tails stuck together. And just using that in the concept like, oh, a bunch of them have been forced to grow together and fuse together. Like, I really love that set piece. That entire section is fantastic.
It makes you think too. You're like, do we really need Yara?
Yeah, like how much?
We really just
also,
met.
Did you guys see the concept art for this?
No.
In
like the unlockable concept art.
No,
I didn't look at it yet. No.
Okay. They went through a few different iterations, as our artists always do. There is one of like a centipede creature of like 100 bodies fused together. And like the bodies are functioning as legs for this massive thing. It's like 100 clickers all fused together.
Now I wonder if they just couldn't get that to work in this scenario.
I think that's what it is. I think they gave it up because of like it wouldn't fit in a hospital, right? Like it probably wouldn't work. But I
like to think that creature lives somewhere in this world.
No, I really don't.
You know, like what about mass internment camps when they first didn't realize what was going on? What if they just shove a bunch, like 100, 200 infected people in a crowded clinic together?
Mm-hmm.
Makes you think.
This sounds like the wet dream from the creator of the Human Centipede, honestly, and I'm not for it at all. But no, that sounds absolutely horrifying, and I really hope they don't ever do anything like that because, I lost my dinner when I saw that because I was sitting there eating pizza through this scenario, and I'm just like,
when that one stalker tears itself out of the body.
Like, oh, come on, really?
That's really when I got that Resident Evil vibe.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
It's stalking you as you're trying to take care of, like the Rat King itself, and it's just like, wow, yeah. I'm like, they gave us a Resident Evil game. I'm loving this, and now I kind of want to see what their version of a horror game would be.
I would like if they were to ever continue on with The Last of Us, please, for the love of God, maybe. Just put the humans, cater that story off to the side a little bit and focus more on like the infected and the actual virus and the spores and whatnot, and dive into that aspect because I would love almost a full-blown Last of Us game just focus on that aspect alone.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Here's my pitch for you, Naughty Dog. Pay me $1 million. Standalone game, completely spin it off from The Last of Us. Standalone game, think Uncharted Lost Legacy, because every standalone game has to be like Uncharted Lost Legacy now. And you play a scientist from a remote community, and you're studying clickers. And it's very much, it plays on the camera mechanics, similar to the Outlast, where you learn things by using your tape recorder, and you learn things, and you learn about the different types of clickers, and you discover how they're evolving and they're changing, and you go through. We'll even do the mass internment camps. You explore internment camps and learn how they evolve, how they create, are they procreating, et cetera, et cetera. I think that'd be really cool.
I both love where your head is at and hate it. I think you're on to something. I think you're on to something.
I will continue to send Neil Druckmann emails with my ideas. But yeah,
play with multiplayer modes with this though.
Oh yes, yeah, definitely. Because it's an open secret that there's going to be something multiplayer related with this at some point. They kind of had to shove it aside. When they do, please don't let it be humans versus humans only. Like incorporate the infected somehow into that.
Let's get our human centipede in there somewhere. Come on, Nick.
One thing I really want from this, if they're going to do a multiplayer mode, and I know the Last of Us fans are going to cringe into oblivion when I say this, but go full Gears of War with this. Give me a PvE mode. I would love to do a wave defense mode with my friends versus enemies and clickers mixed together.
I'd be down for it.
Like, be able to do encounters with your friends. You call them co-op encounters or whatever, and use different parts of the story and be like, okay, wave defense, here you go. Figure out how you do this with limited ammo and everything else. I think it'd be really cool because I think the game mechanically is to a point where that gameplay loop is so addictive and so much fun that it could really do something special in a PvE environment.
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
But I know PvE is an evil term in the gaming community. It's either got to be multiplayer or it's got to be single player. This PvE stuff is terrible, apparently. But we're going to talk about the story. This is where things get hairy. And I'm hairy. So I'm just going to put out my first qualm right at the bat with the story is hitting key critical points and then not coming back to it for either an hour or in some cases 15 hours. Hitting key story points and realizations and then going into a flashback in this game was just as obnoxious as it was in Uncharted 4. We need to stop that. I understand the point of storytelling through flashbacks, but having to go through a key story point and then go into a flashback in which the only relevance that the flashback has is the final 2-minute cutscene at the end is annoying. And I did not like that storytelling mechanic. I typically don't like flashbacks in general. I think they're very they cause issues with pacing to go, okay, we're 3 years before. Now we're current. Now we're 2 years before. And it just gets obnoxious with timelines. And also the dawning realization, Sam even has the DM from me, when Abby storms the theater and you're Ellie and then you surrender, and then it switches to an Abby flashback. I'm like, oh God, I've got to play the other half of this game to get to the conclusion of that scene I just hit. I was just like, it was a great moment because I enjoyed Abby's journey, but to realize that I wasn't going to find out the conclusion of that high critical point for another 10 to 15 hours was just like, oh, okay, I guess. Fine. What about you guys? We'll use this to talk about pacing because I think there's a good conversation to be had with this game around its pacing.
Eric or Jared, either of you want to jump in first?
Yeah, I'll jump in first. Yeah, I definitely felt there was some pacing issues on my first playthrough. Not necessarily the flashback portions because, as you're going through it, you're taking it for what it is. And then, of course, when we come out, we do our Monday morning quarterback, what could be done. So I have heard people say some things I thought would have been interesting if they kind of layered the flashback portions a little bit differently and how they kind of rolled out, instead of spending one whole chunk of time with this one character, maybe you stack them to where you're dealing with Ellie, then you're dealing with Abby, and it's kind of picking up the flow. And then that may have also fed into how you feel about other characters, but we'll get there. But going through, I think in the not so much just the story portions of it, but pacing wise, I kind of felt like, and I saw somebody make this joke, like this is called let's find another way around the video game, So yeah. I had those points where I was kind of like, okay, you started to expect them. But yeah, there were some parts I kind of felt were like drawn out. But as we started the show, I think I mentioned I had someone who tweeted at me who kind of gave me some perspective on that. And even Al gave me perspective on that. And they said, you kind of, in the first run through the game, you have this feeling of like, and it kind of lends into what you're saying, Nick, is you want to get to that next story point because you're intrigued to find out what happens, and it takes a while to get there. So you're really eager to get there. So it kind of makes other parts feel drawn out. Because Al said as he's gone back through and played again, his playthrough time is actually a lot lower than what it was the first time because you're exploring so much, you're looking for so many things, you're just taking it all in. He said, but once you kind of go through again and you kind of know some of the beats, you know where you're kind of going, you're not really spending as much time exploring every little thing. He said it does kind of weirdly pick up things. And this other person said the same thing, like their second playthrough, the pacing felt a little bit better to them. So maybe that'll be the case. I don't know. I will check back with you guys once I start to play through it again and see if I still feel the same way. But I definitely felt there were some parts that felt drawn out.
Yeah. Before I jump to Jared on this next part, in terms of playtime, yeah, like there is a variety of playtimes. Like a lot of people I saw that played and beat through this game, it was like 20, 23 hours. My personal playthrough time was 33. But the thing is I played it on hard right off the bat, and I also got 200 plus collectibles. So I was sitting there going the whole time.
Fine-tooth comb, yeah.
Fine-tooth comb, admiring all the level details and everything else. So I'll definitely come and play because I don't think my next playthrough is going to be 35 hours. It's definitely not. But Jared, how did you find the pacing?
Well, the pacing itself, to me, was a little bit. It was kind of all over the place to me personally. The story itself, I need to put out there that it's actually really good. But the way they went about it, how they went about telling it, I felt wasn't exactly the right direction they probably should have gone in. I still feel strongly that a little bit more time establishing yourself in Jackson with Joel before really moving on to Ellie's revenge story might have been a little bit more beneficial, and maybe adding a little bit more, a couple more side quests with members of the community to where you have to go out and explore Seattle and come back and help establish a community or keep Jackson safe and keep your daily routines going by basically establish more of you being in that world. I felt that was a very quick jump to being from being in Jackson after The Last of Us, the first one, to all of a sudden going straight into this journey. I would have liked a little bit more time in that world before it kind of went all to hell, basically, for Ellie. I do also strongly feel that Abby's long gameplay section was at the wrong point in time. I do feel that it was a fun section to play, but it almost didn't feel like it fit very well. Maybe if it was a little bit shorter and a little bit more to the point, if like more dramatic, short versions of her story and sections of her story might have been a bit more beneficial. But a long gameplay version, to me, almost felt a little drawn out, even though I really liked her story. But at the same token, I liked her story to the point where it could almost be its own game, own standalone game, kind of like Lost Legacy or the Uncharted game. I haven't played it, so I wouldn't really know. But and the other aspect was like the flashbacks that you guys were talking about. I also feel that was a little bit not done right. It was a little scattered to me. In a lot of stories, you use a flashback to really drive home a narrative point in a story, and not kind of multiple memorable moments. You use it for a quick burst. It's a quick flashback to an event in the character's past to remember something quickly, and it's not a long, drawn-out story moment. When that happens for a flashback, it doesn't turn into a flashback. It turns into an actual moment in the game itself, into the story. And to me, the lines are very blended and misconstrued, and people try to use a flashback to fill in story gaps. At least that's what this feels like, is they didn't know how to really properly get the story across, going from Ellie to Abby, and why Abby's doing her thing, and why at the end Ellie decides to do what she does. And to me, like, I still don't know why Ellie in that final fight decides to do what she does, and we'll get to that point soon, or whatever, to this podcast. But there's a lot of story factors to where I felt if they took a step back, like, okay, maybe this doesn't exactly fit right here, this doesn't fit here, but if we move this here and move this there, it better flow. I just feel, I don't know, I just felt there was more focus on trying to tell multiple parts of a story rather than a singular story. I expected to go in thinking it's going to be Ellie's revenge story, but I end up playing two character stories. But I'm also have to, because start being considerate and start caring about other characters, even though I should only be caring about the one character. And I'm not exactly sure what I should be focused on, or which character I should be focused on to care about. Yeah. Who is it? I don't know. And I think that's to me, was a big issue, because in books, a lot of books, you don't normally encounter that issue. If you read a normal book, you read a flashback in that sort of book, it's not very long, but if there is a flashback, it's for a very specific reason. And to me, the specific reasons for these flashbacks in Last of Us Part 2 weren't very good.
The only flashback, before I hop over to Sam, the only flashback that I want to pinpoint precisely where I went, this was ridiculous, was the one where you start out on the hill sniping with Tommy, and then it turns into you're going to go find guitar strings, and then you go through a whole hotel and everything else. The flashback has a very good point at the end. The final 2 minutes of that flashback are of a really big importance, but the 45 minutes to get there was just kind of like, okay.
Yeah,
I guess. And I think my problem with the whole flashback scenario too was I'd have to deal with a different inventory system as well. It's like, oh, you don't have this, but you have this. And I just wasn't a fan of that, of having it go, okay, I've got to manage my flashback inventory now. It just took me out of it at some points. I think some of the flashbacks were really well done, but I think there was too many of them, which is the exact same precise criticism I had for Uncharted 4. So, but Sam.
Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sam?
Yeah, so in regards specifically to the pacing of the story, I thought it was mostly fine. I hear what you guys are saying. I do, but I found the flashbacks, to me, at least in Ellie's portion, were some of the most powerful moments in the game.
I agree.
You want to talk about flashbacks. I mean, first off, just the whole Joel taking Ellie, out to the museum on her birthday to see the dinosaur bone, or the dinosaur fossils rather, and
That
the
was
space
cool.
stuff. Like my heart was melting. Like it was so good. I didn't want it to end. I just wanted it to keep on going. That was what I needed, and all that. But then later on, some of the other flashbacks, they tear your heart out, and that's a good thing. Like, that is a good thing, but they tear your heart out. I love the flashbacks. Abby's flashbacks were a little, okay, they were definitely a little more grating. They were definitely a little more okay. All right, let's move on a little. I'm not quite caring about you, but that's not an issue on the pacing per se. That's a story specific failure. I don't think that's a pacing in the game problem. My issue with the pacing actually comes in the final 10%. But even then, that's a story issue, because I don't think that the final section of this game needed to even be half as long as it was, which we'll talk about when we talk about the ending. But no, overall, I think the pacing of the game is fine and necessary. It's brutal, it's unrelenting, and I think the flashbacks, particularly in Ellie's section, are exactly what they need to be when they need to be. That's me, though.
Yeah, and if I could say too, I think where Jerry's talking about, with Tommy's flashback, or I think Nick said, I think what they're trying to do, and maybe this wasn't necessary because you're already kind of cool with Tommy, but I think they were trying to get you to a point to where they're trying to get you closer to Tommy. They wanted to realize that he and Ellie did have something of a relationship, like an uncle and a niece type thing, right? Yeah. Did we need that with Tommy? We can debate that, whatever. So maybe that kind of adds to it. But I'm kind of in the same accord with Sam. I felt like most of the flashbacks I felt were necessary, but I think, and I was talking to Slow-Mo about this, and he put this in his review, which I actually recommend people go check out. His review is really good. He said, you have, plot, plot storytelling, and then I can't remember what the other part he called, but it's sort of things that are thrown in to make you feel a certain way, but don't always necessarily pay off, type of thing. But he also talked about, and I agree with him on this too, and it can come down to how you place something. So what Jared's talking about, where you get in these positions where you get this flashback, it doesn't necessarily make sense. But say the scenario with Abby and Joel and what kind of happens, maybe right after that pivotal moment where they come face to face and she does a certain thing to him, then you go into her flashback of what happened with her dad. Maybe now you're gonna get back, right? So you're gonna get back to what happened, but then it's sort of now you're moving into what happened with her, as opposed to it coming later, where you're already kind of trying to figure out who she is and what's going on. But it's holy shit, this is why this girl is pissed. It's sort of I know we're Monday morning quarterbacking, but maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's not that the flashbacks were terrible; it's just how they were
placed.
Yeah, how they were storyboarded.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that was part of the problem. One thing in terms of pacing and what made it hard, and I don't even think it's necessarily the game's fault, and people may disagree with me on this, is I found a lot harder of a time finding emotional connection to Abby's part of the story, not with Abby, but with her friends. Because the thing is with Ellie's side of the story, these were all characters you fell in love with from the first game. And Dina was super easy to fall in love with right off the hop. And Jesse was super likable and everything else. So it's really easy to fall in with these characters again and be like, yeah, this feels like home almost. It feels like comfort food of people you've been with. And then you flip sides to Abby's side and you kind of already hate these people because of what they did to you in the first half of the game. So you start off not liking them in the first part of the game, and then it doesn't do a really great job of making you go, yeah, these are great people. You kind of sit there and go, these guys are kind of assholes, which is part of The Last of Us. Let's face it, the biggest thing that many fans of this game aren't willing to deal with is the fact that Joel was not a good person. Period. End of story. Like, you were the bad guy in The Last of Us. At the end, you were the villain. Whether people want to agree, like, you can argue philosophically about his reasonings behind it and everything else, but the fact that he basically adopted Ellie as his daughter and went, no, I'm not letting this happen again. I can't let this happen again, no matter the cost.
Yeah.
And then murdered a ton of people to fulfill that goal of protecting his surrogate daughter, for the lack of a better word, makes him terrible. And, like, people can fight about that to the end of the moon. But I was one of the few people, like, when Joel got thwacked, I was like, yeah, I can see it. I didn't understand Abby's motivation.
Because it's karmic.
I kind of went, I get it.
Yeah, it is karmic.
It's karmic, but at this, the same time, and when you think about that, it's like human beings do things all the time that don't make them good people. They do what they have to do to do certain things. It may not be out of being malicious, but you make a choice based on your own selfish want and need, right? So what Joel did doesn't make him a good person, but in a lot of those cases, it's like, he's looking at it like, yeah, I can't go through this again, for one, and B, it's like, or two, he has now grown this fondness for this girl, and then on top of that, it's sort of like, it's not even guaranteed to work.
Yeah,
Right. How exactly is a militia group going to distribute a vaccine? Like, that is a very legit question to ask.
Yeah, and then and it's that thing too. Like, if we're in that situation, with a family member or a child of your own, it's like, would you be willing to do that for the greater good? Because even when Abby said to her dad, I would expect you to do the same thing, and you could see the pause in his face, like, I don't know if I could do it if it was you.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he's completely willing to do it to Ellie. But Joel's like, the hell with that noise.
Well,
for all intents and purposes, this is my daughter now.
I think that's the beauty in The Last of Us, the original and this game, is that it's not necessarily like there is, like, terrible people in that game. Like, I'm sorry, but Isaac was not likable at all. Period.
No. And I don't think he was meant to be likable.
I was like, no.
But at the same time, you don't know what his journey has been to get to
that
point.
Yeah, but
can I focus in on that point, Eric? Because honestly, I was almost surprised we saw him a second time. I almost thought it was just going to be that one scene, because you go through all of Ellie's campaign, you keep hearing Isaac doesn't like this, Isaac doesn't like that, Isaac isn't happy, Isaac, and they build him up, and I thought that worked really well as, like, yeah, this guy is a terrifying leader of basically this 1,000-strong army that he has somehow built in Seattle. What is his story? Where did he come from? He's sort of like the guy whose notes you find in the first Last of Us-ish. The guy living in the tunnels he was on the boat and all that, except we get to see him for a couple of scenes. And I almost wish they don't kill him on Scar Island, but, I mean, that is what it is, whatever. But, like, you definitely get the sense of this guy's had a journey to get to where he's at. Clearly not a good person, but it's realistic. And that goes for so much of this game. The dialogue and the characters are realistically built up in a way that most other games don't hit.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to touch on is that the fact of the matter is when the whole world goes to the crapper like it has in The Last of Us, there are no good people left. Good people die. There are people that survive and try to do the best thing that they can do in a realistic manner. Like,
every day is making it to the next day.
Yeah, every day is making it to the next day. But I think part of the brilliance is they showed Joel getting softer in his old age. And I saw someone make it as a joke against that the writing was terrible, but I thought it was brilliant in the fact that Joel and Tommy just trusted Abby right off the hop. If that had been in the first game, they would have put a gun to her head first and questioned every step of the way before doing anything. But because they've been in Jackson for so long, they interacted with so many people, they just assumed that we're all in a terrible situation. We want to get out of this. We need to work together to get out of it. That's a very realistic human reaction. Even if you're in a life-threatening situation with someone you don't like, you're going to try to come together so you can both get out of it, or at least yourself, in the very least.
And I know that's a point of contention that people keep going on. It's like Joel would never let his guard down like that. And it's like...
It's years later. He's older.
And that's kind of how that was like my interpretation too, Nick. And I was kind of like, because I'll use this as a quick example. Like my mom would say to me all the time, she goes, "The grandfather that you have, you don't know him like that was my dad. He's like, he is so soft with you guys. He with us, there was none of this softness. Now he's so laid back." And that's what she always tell me. And I'm like, that does happen because you have piss and vinegar at a certain age. And this will tie back into when we talk about Ellie's arc and the things that happen with her. But in a teenage thing, in a early age thing, you kind of have like piss and vinegar. You have all the gusto, you have whatever. And then as you start to age, and I can speak from experience, because I'm at 44, I'm not the guy I was at 21. I say it all the time. I know, because I'll ask my mom, I'm like, "Did you like me when I was a teenager?" She's like, "I hated you." I love you to death, and I really like you now. She goes, "But no, when you were a teenager, oh, you were a scumbag." Kind of how she talks about it, right? So yeah, you get to a scenario where you have Joel the smuggler, Joel the hunter, Joel that had to do whatever he had to do. Because if you remember the first game when he's with Tess, he wasn't really as trusting, but Tess is like, "Yo, we got to do this because we need these guns to survive. So we're going to take this girl and we're going to do this." He wanted no parts of it. He trusted none of it. He didn't want to do it, right? So he didn't want to let his guard down. So he meets this girl automatically. Over time, he let his guard down. He let her in, right? Mm-hmm. So then you met Tommy, and then you can kind of see Tommy, because Joel and Tommy ran together. They did horrible things together, but now Tommy's been in this civilization. And when you meet Tommy, very chill.
Yep.
It's almost like you're domesticated in a way, right? So yeah. It's sort of like the same thing with Joel. It's like, I'm not saying Joel would be 100% trusting, but you just went through this thing. You've been in this town. And at the same time, you might be a little bit distracted because you talk about the flashback. He just got to a point to where he may be able to reconcile with his daughter. Yeah. I'm calling Ellie his daughter at this point. So
yeah, she absolutely is. And also, the whole, these people just helped us gun down a horde of infected.
Right.
These people didn't just gun us down. This woman told us where we could go get help. It's life or death moments. I mean, it's that, sure, but I see what you're saying, Nick, about how, they've changed. I don't think they've changed that much. I think they've softened a little bit, but not too much. I think it was just we don't have any other choice. And I think what works about, don't get me wrong, what works about his death is that it takes you off guard. Like, it is brutal, it's horrifying, it takes you off guard. But also, I think he was sizing everyone in that room up. Yeah. He's standing and he's looking around at everyone. He's gauging everything. But at the same time, it's 2 on 8. What are you going to do? You have to just play it cautious. You have to play it smooth. And unfortunately for him, he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Mm-hmm. And that's just all there is to it.
And I want to go back on and check this out because I watched the Spoilercast for Kind of Funny, and they kind of talked about that. And they said there's a point where you can kind of see there's a regret on his expression. Like almost like damn it, I let my guard down, and here we are. And then you realize the situation, and it was like, save your speech. Let's go. Because it's chickens are coming home to roost.
Yeah, no, and that was something I liked as well. I haven't done my replay yet. I am going to replay it for Platinum. I'm probably going to start tomorrow morning. Mm-hmm. Actually, God help me with all those collectibles. Good. That's going to be interesting. But no, I didn't view it as them being softened so much as just we're in this position, wrong place, wrong time, and like you just pointed out there. It does. It does. Like
situation, and then boom.
What does Joel say in the very first game, shortly before Tess ends up getting infected? Because Ellie's like, "Man, we're on a roll," and he's like, "It's called luck, and it is going to run out." That's how it rolls.
Yeah,
that's just how it happens. But yeah, I did like some of his last words. Just save whatever speech you've got, because he knew at that point what was going on.
Well, and see, the thing is as someone who this part of the game was spoiled for me. Joel getting killed was the massive spoiler. Everyone thought that was the end of the game. Really happy that that's like the first few hours of the game.
Me too. That was a big spoiler I had too.
Yeah, I'm really glad that that was like a 3-hour in spoiler and not an end game spoiler. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, I walked away really happy with that. But it was still shocking to watch her just pull the shotgun and blow his leg to bits. Because it was like, whoa, okay, that went 0 to 100 quick. Mm-hmm. Like, I knew it was coming. I'd seen it before. But
his knee was gone.
Yeah, like shotgun, he was gone. Tommy's getting slammed off the the floor like a rag doll, and Joel's getting dragged off, and you're like, wow, could this scenario get any worse? And then you see Ellie, you take control of Ellie, and you're like, oh no, this could get worse.
Yeah. But that is the tone. That's what, and I think people kind of lose that when they're like, this is a story about Joel and Ellie, and I'm pissed off. And I'm like, it's The Last of Us. The Last of Us. And I specifically remember, and you guys might remember this too, when they said that they were going to do another game. I remember people saying, do we really need another game?
Yeah.
Like, their story ended so well. Hey, and if they are going to do another game, I don't think it should be Joel and Ellie. It should be other people. Mm-hmm. It sounds like they kind of split the difference. They kind of heard that, and they were like, okay, well, we're going to introduce, because there are things that happen to other people. And I think the thing with Joel, like Nick said, Joel, we took ownership of him as a character because we spent so much time with him. Yes. But was not a good person. He was a hero to some, an enemy to others. But when you look at how the world works, it's ripple effects. If you take a huge rock and you throw it in a lake, you see on the top surface what happens. There's ripples, there's a splash, and then it settles. But you don't know what hell that rock did sliding down into the water and what it may have hit and killed and destroyed. And the moves and the things that we do have that effect. You know?
This is something that bugs me too. If I can just point this out, Eric, I remember because we had started talking when this game first was announced. We weren't friends, like close friends, like we are now. Obviously, Unfortunately, I didn't know you, Nick, or you, Jared, but I knew Eric, and I remember saying to you on a podcast that because one of the popular theories when this game was first announced at PSX 2016, I think it was.
That's when she's playing the guitar and they're talking, right?
Yeah. I said one of the popular theories on the internet at the time was, what if Joel is dead because the Fireflies came after him and Ellie is going to get revenge? That was the most popular theory when this game was first announced 4 years later. So I have a lot of issues that we're going to dive in and that I diverge away from these guys. I have things I really don't like about this game and what it does with its tone and characters, but you cannot tell me for 1 single second that this opening doesn't make sense. It's horrible. Yeah. It's brutal. I had to put the control down. I was in shock, but it fits. And people predicted this 4 years ago. So please save me the "you did him dirty" speech.
Exactly. Sam, where did it come from all of a sudden that we didn't get to go on an adventure with Joel? It's like you were saying that was never before, and he says, "You're really going to do this?" And she says, "Yeah, I'm going to kill them all." What do we say? Is Joel dead and she's seeing this?
Mm-hmm. That was always on deck. That was always the prevailing theory. So no, I have a lot of issues in the story we're about to dive into, I think. Mm-hmm. But in terms of setup, no, this was the way to set it up. I don't want to hear otherwise.
Look, the thing is the overall tone from this game. What I'm going to convey, and then we're going to talk about some stuff that is questionable in this game, is that this game delves deeply into what they call the circle of abuse, or we'll call it the circle of hatred. So the whole principle around the cycle of abuse, we're going to use abuse for this word, is we see it in families. The father's abusive beats the son grows up, beats his son. It's called cycle of abuse. And what we saw in this is why I would call a cycle of hatred. I am not a psychiatrist. Do not quote me on this. But is Joel killed Abby's father, which then sent Abby on a path. Abby then killed Joel, which then sent Ellie on a path. And then in the end of this game is these two people fighting for they don't even know what anymore. Mm-hmm. Abby's over this. Ellie just wants to keep on going because it's all she's got left. And then in the end, through the miracles of a small, tiny flashback of Joel, she decides that she's not going to finish it. In my heart, I want to believe she didn't want to finish it because then you'd have Lev going through the cycle of hatred. It would just continue in the theory that he would be well enough to survive whatever state he was in. It's just a continuous cycle, and you have to stop that cycle at some point. That's where I would give them credit for the writing, is that is Ellie going, no, I need to stop this now and everything else. My biggest part of the problem with it, and I said this to Sam, it's a very stupid way of wording it, but what really pissed me off about the ending was the fact that it felt like it ended, and then they added another 2 hours in, and then you get the same result in the end, minus a few fingers. And I understand what they were going for. I get what they were going for. It just didn't resonate with me. Like when I got to the farm, and I told Sam, I'm like, this is beautiful. This is the Uncharted 4 ending again. This is great. This is Ellie's happy with Dina. They're taking care of Jesse's baby. It's great. I love this. And then she started doing the Joel flashbacks. I'm like, oh no, we're not doing this, are we? And then Tommy shows up. He miraculously survived that whole scenario, which blew my mind. I'm like, when the medical did you survive getting shot? Because he was basically shot in the head. Like, you can sit there and argue it was grazed or whatever. From my perspective, that man got capped in the back of the head.
I actually can attest to knowing someone that has been shot in the face below his eye and is still alive, and who's actually my dad's police partner for 15 years.
Okay, well,
it does happen.
It does happen. It's very rare, but it does happen.
I get the medical capabilities they had in that theater. That's what I was.
Because I actually
my suspension of disbelief was it was in the theater, and like an hour of battle went by as Tommy's in there bleeding out, and they had to get back.
That's where suspension of disbelief kicks in for sure.
It's like 60 pints of blood. I'm okay.
It was over the top. If they wanted him to still be alive, and I'm happy he's still alive. Don't get me wrong, but if they shouldn't have had him get shot there. Just shoot him in the ankle or shoot him in the leg, and that would have been enough to get the point across.
Shoot him in the leg with an arrow. Something.
But Tommy's also a cautionary tale of when you can't let something go, how you can just lose it all. You know,
that's kind of the cautionary tale of the whole thing, because
it is. But he definitely
I make the joke that nothing changed, but Ellie literally threw away everything.
I think part of that is because of that guilt trip Tommy put on her. Because I think in a way she was trying to work through it, you know, and it's just all she needed was. She didn't need Tommy showing up to give her that extra nudge, like, you know, you said you were gonna, and I can't do it. I hear and I'm limping.
Here's where we start to come into. Okay, so can we just talk about the ending? Can we just dive in on that?
Yeah, go ahead, because we can tackle stuff as we go. It's gonna be all over the place at the Spoilercast.
And like I said before, this game is so dense. Like we could talk about this for 6 hours. Honestly, I feel. Here's my issue, and I've explained this to Nick, and I wrote something that. A piece earlier today that sort of exemplifies how I feel about it. But I think it's two different endings that both work on their own, fused together. My issue is option A, if you want to have Ellie break the cycle of vengeance and move on and just not, accept, hey, I can't win this. I'm done. I have to give up before this destroys me. I think it would have made more sense to do it at the theater. How much more powerful would it be if she's on the farm, raising the kid, she's got Dina, Tommy even still comes by to visit, and, she has her PTSD. She sees Joel getting hit over and over again, but she has to, grip down on something and power through it and accept, no, I can't let that consume me. I feel like instead, we get this 2.5 hour, okay, I'm going to go out and I'm going to try it again, only to then reach that point feels... how do I put nihilistic almost and pointless? And I don't understand why that particular flashback would suddenly be what triggers her giving Abby mercy, even though it was that PTSD of seeing Joel in the first place that caused her to go out there. It seems contradictory to me. That's my issue. The other ending, I think that would have worked, and it would have still been nihilistic, but I think it would have fit the tone better. And this is one of the two I prefer. Have Ellie kill Abby and Lev. Just have her refuse to give it up. Have her kill them. And then return and realize, okay, I got revenge. But there's apologies if you hear fireworks in the background. Sorry.
All right, same here. I was going to ask you guys, do you hear it? Because it's going off like crazy here. Like
It's going off like crazy.
Like a war going outside right now.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So apologies if that comes through. But I haven't heard it on your end, Eric. But if I hear it, I understand. If I hear it, I understand.
All right.
There's one in every neighborhood, I swear. Anyway, but and have her realize, okay, I killed them. It got me nothing. Just I don't know. That's where I'm at. I don't think fusing those two works together, because I'm left not understanding why she did what she did, even though I think up until that point, the character motivations throughout this game make sense. Even if you don't agree with them, it makes sense. They act in character.
Mm-hmm.
Her decision at the end is simply too sudden for me to understand. I don't get it. I appreciate what Naughty Dog tried to do. I want to be very clear about that. They had some balls trying this, and not playing this game safe and say, no, for basically half the game, you're going to play as the antagonist, and we're going to try to make you like her, and we're going to get you to see her side of the story. And I'll go more in depth if you guys want, but this is the other side of the issue I have with my current take on the ending. I don't think Abby's that sympathetic. Like, I don't really feel as sympathetic for her as I think the game wanted me to feel. But I don't want to take over the conversation, so I want to hear your thoughts as well.
Can I jump in, or Jared, did you want to?
Please. Anyone.
Go ahead, Eric. Go ahead.
No, you got something that you really want to get out, so go ahead, man.
It's just like, I have to agree with Sam, because I don't find Abby to be a sympathetic character at all. Like, if it was Abby in Ellie's shoes in that final fight of them beating the hell out of each other on that beach, I'm pretty sure Abby would kill Ellie and be happy about it, and probably spit in her face and dig her feet into her corpse's head and just walk off onto the boat and be like, I'm happy. I achieved what I set out to do. This is what I wanted to do. I feel accomplished. Let's go. That's the ending. But with her whole having that one sudden flashback, and all of a sudden having that little bit of remorse, to go, okay, but the whole story, I've been led to believe you're sought out to kill this character because you have this much hatred for Abby. But why all of a sudden, at this one point in time in the story, do you have this one little bit of remorse, where throughout the entire story beforehand, I didn't really get any sort of telling signs that you had that same sentiment as you did at the very end of the game? To me, I didn't really understand why she had all of a sudden that decision, and it left me disappointed, because I wanted that revenge. I wanted to kill Abby. I'm like, nuh-uh. This girl has messed with my life. I don't care. She came after me. She had the choice when her father died to either seek out vengeance or not. And she came after me. All right, I'm going to come after her, and I'm going to end her. But that didn't turn out that way. I will say this would have been an integral point where Naughty Dog could have done a decision moment. You can either let her live or let her die, and then you could have either two branching out different story endings. But that wouldn't have worked out if they might not have planned potentially another continuation of the series to follow on with the story. But who knows? That's just where I'm coming from.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, I will go last on this topic.
Okay. I actually really like Abby as a character. Mm-hmm. I actually did feel sympathy for Abby, because I don't think Abby's design is by accident, because I know people have like these issues with her physique and this and that, and I'm like, well,
and those people are stupid, to be
yes,
absolutely 100%. I think a lot, if you think about Abby, I think what she did to Joel, her physique and her motivations for she's in the wolves dealing with Isaac, right? And he sees something in her. So that's like, for all intents and purposes, like her father figure in a way. Mm-hmm. A lot of her motivations was to make sure Isaac got what he needed and to be impressed, and to also, in this company of men and women, but mostly men, is being tough and being like the appearance of being control, when truth be told, as you deal with her and you go further with her, you realize she doesn't have as much control as she presents. Mm-hmm. Right? She's very afraid. She's not very sure of herself. So she put all that into building this physique and being tough. And she's a very accomplished soldier and very accomplished at following orders, but her life is a mess, right? So I kind of think I did feel sympathy for her. I do think she's a sympathetic character, because I think also she delivered a very poignant line when she says to Ellie in the theater, which again, it's The Last of Us, so things happen. It's like, tit for tat, and revenge is key. But at the same time, she said, We let you live and you wasted it. That was, to me, a very powerful line. And the only thing that kept her from going over that line, because I know we'll get to this too, is like once Ellie saw that what she did to Mel, and not to dunk on Mel, but I was like, to me, Mel didn't even need to be in the game. And on top of that, who sent Mel out to patrol pregnant?
Yes, that's another thing. Like,
that bothered me. So I'm like, she's climbing up on rafters and shit. She's pregnant.
How many, dude? How many? Okay, we're not talking. Oh, you just found out you're pregnant. Like Dina, that was realistic. That was fine. Dina was done great. Also, Dina's was actually very cleverly foreshadowed, in my opinion, with her getting sick and seeing blood and all that.
Yeah.
But Mel, like, how many 8.5-month pregnant women do you know that are climbing fences and nearly doing parkour and going out on assault?
I'm just this is a knock on that one for me. I'm like, nah, I'm not buying this one, guys.
Yeah, like my wife was 8 months pregnant. If we were like, we can't get through that door, we'll have to find another way around. She's like, no, you're finding another way around.
You're right. I'm sitting my ass on this log, and then you're going and climbing that fence, right?
Yeah.
But I think what Abby did to Joel, I don't think she felt any satisfaction from it. I felt like, you know, in her conversations with Owen, it was like, you know, what happened to us? Where do we, you know, we lost the light. And I think when she runs into Lev and his sister, I think she started to find like that purpose. You know, it took us a while to get there, but I think when she has the knife to Dina and she'd already seen what Ellie did to Mel, and it's very much at this point like all bets are off. Like, you know, all my friends are gone, the people that I love, and it's like Nick said, it's the vicious cycle. And she was ready to do Dina, and Lev told her no. I think again that was sort of where it was like, I'm tired, I'm done, I have something to live for, I can't do this anymore. And she kind of said it to Ellie like, don't let me see you again, because here's the second time that I'm walking away, and now you have like your life. And like I said, when she got back, you know, to the farm, and that could have been a beautiful moment to end it. I didn't want to see Ellie go the full distance and kill Abby, because again, as the player, Sam said he felt empty by not kind of getting there. I would have felt empty by her going there, because I'm like, everyone's saying this isn't the Ellie that we know. I'm like, no, it's not the Ellie that we know, because this is somebody who's had no direction. Everyone in her life has been taken away or killed, right? She finally got to a point, even she and Joel had a rift between them. And I feel it's a story about things left unsaid and undone. And we know we've lived these scenarios to where you didn't get to say something to the person that you cared about before they were taken. You know, they got to a point where they were going to, and he was taken away. The last person that she really felt connection to, or who gave her advice or was a mentor to her. Ellie's, for all intents and purposes, wild. You know, and the things she learned is from seeing the person who was also at times wild. But I think that last moment when she's on the beach and it's like, you know how it goes. It's like, you've gone so far with something, you don't think you can come back from it. You're like, I might as well, because shit, I've done so much already. But I think all the visions of Joel, every vision she saw was Joel bashed in and butchered and bleeding. But she saw that last one where she saw the Joel that she knew, because he's playing the guitar and he's smiling, because Joel was not a hero. He did what he had to do, but ultimately Joel wasn't a monster. Joel didn't actively look to go and hurt people. He hurt the people that he felt it was either me or you, or I had to protect Ellie. And I would argue too, he didn't need to kill the doctor. The guy kind of had the knife, like, dude, he could have easily punched him in the face and kept it moving, you know, but he brutally killed him, right? So I think when she saw that, it was sort of like saying, and I know I'm rambling, I'll finish up here.
No, not at all.
I think when she sees, she has Abby where she wants her. And I think by the time they even got there and she realized she put a knife to Lev's neck and she has Abby, I think even at that point her heart wasn't in it, and she sees that vision of Joel, and it was the last thing to say, I can completely be the monster now. And then what does that leave me? Because it's going to leave me empty probably. But I have this vision now of Joel with this last thing, and it's a better vision that I've seen of him since this whole thing started. And it's the Joel that I really remember, the one that took me to the museum, you know, the one that gave me the advice, even before I found out what he truly did, you know?
Yeah, see, and this is the great thing about endings, is there's always going to be more, like we've already seen, a varied opinions on what the ending is. I really liked Abby as a character. Normalize women that can choke me out with their thighs. Please. Oh God, let's normalize this in video games because buff women, bless up. But
And all that is men feeling threatened by it. Let's be real.
You find me an Amazon woman, I'm there.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
I'm telling you, Angelique, just so you know.
Beside me glaring at me. It's fine. I'll be dead by the morning. One of you will have to go on a west side or an east side road trip of revenge for me. It's not Santa Barbara, but yeah. But no, I liked Abby's character. My biggest problem with it, and this comes back to what I talked about earlier, is from The Last of Us, we got to know Joel, we got to know Ellie, we got to know Tommy. So we had these deep connections with these characters. I never got a connection really with any of Abby's friends outside of Owen. Owen was the only somewhat likable person. And even then, I'm like, dude, your wife's pregnant. Get your dick out of this woman. Settle down. Like, it is not. I don't care what scenario this is. Like, Owen never stopped loving Abby. Period. End of story. Abby was on a revenge war path, and then after she got her revenge, she was empty and was looking to feel anything. I get that and everything else. And she's an overglorified homewrecker at the very least. But the thing is that, like, when Manny died, when Tommy killed Manny, I was like, he was kind of funny, I guess.
No, I was okay with that because he spit on Joel.
Yeah.
I was like,
Manny and Nora. I want to say Nora as well. Like,
yeah.
when she was taunting. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to hijack what you were saying, Nick, but I think that was a very powerful moment. It was almost like the dark echo in the first game of when Joel was like, "Oh, that's okay, I believe you," and then he kills that guy off screen, brutally. Except here, they make you, the player, go through with it. You're the one who has to press that button and beat Nora to death. I thought that was a really good, really dark, unsettling way of doing it. Anyway,
yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, actually, I completely forgot about that point. I wanted to bring that up. Is that really put into my head how far Ellie was willing to go? Was the Nora scene is, I don't care what gets in my way. I will do what I need to do to get where I need to go. And I didn't find Nora likable. You had like 5 minutes of interaction with her in Ellie's playthrough at the camp, and that was pretty much it. You didn't really have a lot of interaction with her aside from the hospital as well. So Mel, I just sat there the whole time going, why is this pregnant woman running around? Like, the whole reason, like, I understand the whole thing of her dying, being pregnant, supposed to be tragic, but I'm like, we've been letting her run around Hell's Half Acre, full bore pregnant, like 8 months pregnant. This was going to happen. It's just, it happened this way.
And I tell you, who didn't care for Abby? Mel. Mel did not like Abby.
Not one bit.
The thing is the only people that were insanely, I find, memorable in Abby's side of the story was Owen was memorable in certain ways. The flashback with him and Abby skipping on training and everything else, that was a kind of a cool flashback to give Abby perspective. And I feel like Abby's story was lacking that emotional context, but I kind of understand why it was too, is because she was feeling empty. It's hard to feel something when you've gotten your revenge and you still feel hollow. So it's a really hard story point to build on. But I found, like, with Lev and his sister, there was a lot better storytelling things. Like, all of a sudden, Abby threw everything she knew out the window to protect Lev. Like, she didn't even seem to understand it herself. She's like, I'm protecting a Seraphite. I don't know why. I'm just doing this because I need to feel something. And I feel something for this person, so I'm going to protect them. It's very much what kind of happened with Joel, too. He was empty. He lost his partner, and then he slowly became attached to Abby. Mm-hmm. I get the story connections. It just didn't click with me a lot. And a lot of the deaths in Abby's portion just kind of made me go, okay. And I think that's because they didn't have the amount of time to build up those characters. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I don't think they should have done like a full game to build up Abby's friend list roster. I don't think they should have done that. But maybe make them more relatable and interesting. Because, like, you shouldn't walk away from like five of Abby's friends and being like, yeah, I didn't care about 4 out of 5 of them. And it didn't have that impact. I almost feel like it would have had more impact for Ellie killing these people if you knew them before. Because since you brutally murdered them as Ellie first, then you get to know them. You're like, well, I already know what's going to happen to you.
Yeah, that's kind of like what Slow-Mo pointed out in his review, like, and kind of goes back to what I was saying to you, Jared. Like, if they would have put some of these segments ahead of certain events, then you would have immediately been like, wow, they didn't necessarily deserve that, because now I understand where they're coming from, and they're kind of caught up in this war, you know?
Like the whole Tommy and like Tommy's event with Ellie and going into the hotel with Joel and that whole segment. I feel that segment could actually maybe been before Joel's death, sort of thing. Like I really felt that could have helped maybe reestablish the connection between the player and Joel and the story a little bit more, like to the first Last of Us compared to what the current story is, and it might have helped drive home more of a substantial emotional impact of Joel dying.
Yeah. Because the thing is, like, Nick's absolutely right when it comes to Owen. Like, it's like you don't care for him, but you sympathize with him a bit, because it's sort of like a guy that's sort of like, he doesn't really want any parts of any of this. He hasn't since he was younger. And he's just kind of sticking around. Maybe it's for Abby, maybe it's for whatever. And he doesn't really like have anything that's like his in a way.
Yeah.
I think he finds himself in this. He loves Abby. He cares for Abby. And he's lost. And I think Mel was a byproduct of that. Like, I'm looking for something to do, and damn it, she got pregnant.
Yeah.
He didn't seem happy about it. He didn't seem to really care about her. She didn't even really particularly seem to care about him. It's just they were in this scenario together. But you do kind of feel for him in the fact that it's like he wanted something different. He's like, I'm fighting for land that I don't even care about. You know, I don't really care about what Isaac wants. You know, and that's, you know.
And I think his dad, because like when Ellie kills him, he's just the one guy that seemed to kind of have a little bit of empathy in the group when you kill him as Abby or as Ellie. And you're like, oh, okay, so he was the one that wasn't a complete asshole.
Right. Right.
But when you start realizing, like, this is a man who is done with this. He has gone through it. He is done. He just wants to leave. He wants to go find fireflies. He's trying to recapture what they had before Joel went and fucked it all up. He's just trying to find something that's normalized, because like before that, you know, they do scavenge runs. They had a pretty good life set up. You know, they were working with the doctors. It was like a really, I'm not going to say cozy lifestyle, but it felt safer. He's chasing that safety feeling. And like the whole, I want to go to Santa Barbara, I'm going to get on a boat, and I just want to get away from everything. And he was running from having a child. Like every father at some point in their life, before, when your significant other's pregnant, you go, oh God, how fast can I run? And then you round yourself out and you accept responsibility, or at least most of us do.
Well, that's also the sign that you're not with somebody you really want to be with.
Yeah.
Anytime I've had a scare in my life, I was like, I got to be stuck with this chick.
Oh man.
I'm out of here. But there's something I want to talk about. It doesn't really necessarily, it fits into gameplay a bit, but it fits kind of into story too, is the boss fight where you're forced to fight Ellie. I felt some type of way about that whole thing. Weird. Because I was like, there was part of me that got Abby killed like 20 times because I was like, damn it, you deserve that. But there was also a point of, I really want to give credit for it, because the 3 stages to it of Ellie's really crafty in this regard, or Ellie's really good at this. I found the final stage where she's like planting bombs and hunting you with a bow. I'm like, this is Ellie using all of her survival techniques, because Abby and Ellie are yin and yang in both personality and how they choose to survive. Ellie relies more on being crafty, being stealthy, and everything else. And as you can tell by Abby's body form, she is big, brutal, and gets the job done is her way of doing things. And we see that in how they fight each other. Is Ellie's, finding ways to escape, dodge, being creative on the fly, and Abby's just like pin punch.
She can't go toe to toe with Abby.
And that's the thing. And I think that's what really one of the things they did right. I'm not going to say right. It hits different is when you first find Abby at the end and she's tied up like that. You let her go and the muscle's gone and she's just this average. I don't want to make it sound condescending, but she's your average girl in terms of her build. She's someone that's been starved for 6 months. And
she doesn't have it in her anymore.
She just did no part of it.
Yeah.
And like, I agree with Sam though, is like, you go on the road trip, pack your bags, you go on the boat, you go all the way to the other side of the goddamn United States. You slaughter probably 100 bikers, which is fine. Those guys deserve to die. They were all crap. No love lost there. You slaughtered 100 people, did all this, wounded yourself to a point where you may not return. And then one flashback, all of a sudden you develop the empathy. It didn't hit for me. I didn't get that empathy, but also the fact of I was just like, why did you do this in the first place? Like I did.
If I can, I think a part of it, for all intents and purposes, I think Ellie was actually okay with just staying with Dina because when she talked to Dina about it, she's like, I haven't been able to let it go. I don't know how you are. And Dina kind of explained to her, it's like, I made a choice for you and JJ to try to let it go. But I haven't let it go. I'm just trying to let it go. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to work through, which most of us would try to do. We try to deal with the thing and move forward with it. And then it just didn't help when Tommy comes with the added pressure, right? Because she did make that pact with him. And he tapped into Ellie's loyal side, But I definitely feel like what happened with her and Abby in the end wasn't at all for Abby.
Mm.
I just don't, I don't feel like she. I think if she could have had it in there, I think Ellie would have just drowned her and it would have been done. But I think it was just Ellie was just trying to hold on to one more piece of her humanity, like this journey that she's been on. That's how I interpret it.
The one thing I want to talk about was, and it struck me as weird because we've known Tommy for 32 games now. That Tommy that showed up at the cabin. Or showed up at the farm, was not a Tommy that we'd seen ever. Like, I'm not sure, I understand being, wounded, the head wound and everything else and blah, 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 blah. But it was so out of character for him, I just kind of found it shocking. Because you're talking to the guy who literally argued with Ellie to stay and let it go. To all of a sudden be like, why the fuck aren't you going after her? Why did you let it go? It just seemed like such a twist on his character. And I just didn't like it. It just sat there and it was like, oh, okay, so you're going to send her on the warpath. Okay. It's a story trigger. I get it. But it seemed out of character for Tommy and I just didn't like it.
Mm. Yeah, I could see that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
He's one of those characters where you want to know more about, and kind of wish he was more a part of the story, but really wasn't.
It would almost be great DLC with Tommy and Joel.
Yes. Before either you or Eric or Nick had finished the game, Jared finished it right after I did, and or shortly after I did, and I messaged him and I said, "Wouldn't it be cool if they did a Left Behind DLC, with the flashbacks and everything, and it's you playing as Tommy going through Seattle, but they flash back to his and Joel's days on the run, finding out what caused."
Would be fantastic.
That would be, in my opinion, the perfect send off to these characters, the perfect closing the book,
and the perfect way to get these people who haven't played the game to shut up.
That too, but honestly, I don't care about them. I'm talking about me. I'm talking about us. Right. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. But I do think there's a lot to explore there. I think, and that might address kind of what Nick is talking about in terms of, the Tommy we see at the end is a very hardened, spiteful person that isn't the joyful leader you see early on. What happened with him? Even briefly in the fight with Abby, where you're playing as Abby and you see him, he has changed. He has become this cold sniper, picking the WLF off. He disposes of Manny with ease. It's like, okay, he and Joel were on the run for so long. Is he tapping back in to that side of him that's been dormant for so long? And if so, I think that would be an interesting story to tell. I know they've said they aren't doing DLC. I hope they reconsider, and I hope they do something like that. Yeah, because that would be
that's a story to tell.
And we're kind of going backwards here because we tackled the ending, because I think the ending was the point of most people's issues, so to speak, the game. But I kind of want to go backwards a bit, because the sniper scene was so brilliant in the fact that I went, I once again messaging Sam going, oh my God, look, it's a Last of Us and there's a sniper scene. And he's like, don't worry, it's a twist. And I'm like, oh, okay. I died multiple times on that. The brutality of going up that parking garage with the hordes of infected, plus them ringing the dinner bell and dodging sniper rounds. And yeah, that was some really tough gameplay there. But
he was a damn maestro with that sniper rifle, man. That's the sniper in the first game had nothing on Tommy, man.
Oh no! Yeah. Oh no! And honestly, that's another thing. Like, if Yara hadn't been there, I think he'd have had Abby at that point. Oh, yeah. He whacked her after he whacked her in the face with the rifle. Like, I was actually like, oh wait, huh?
I thought he was actually going to do something really serious to Abby for a second out of that, or like be close to maiming Abby to a point where she might not end up being important in the story later on, or something drastic, anyways. But yeah, I was just like, hope.
I sat there and the sniper's pinging off, and you try to shoot at him from a distance once you get up to where he is. You can't really get a glimpse of him. Yeah, but the moment that Manny gets shot, you see the jacket, and I'm like,
yeah, son of a bitch.
and I think the brilliance of what I like about The Last of Us is I found myself sitting there going, oh, that damn pesky sniper. But I'm like, oh, it's Tommy. I love Tommy. Oh, shit, Tommy. Oh, shit. And I think that's really great. But I think one of the most underrated characters in this game, in terms of how this character helped develop certain other characters, is Dina by a long shot. Some of those missable moments that her and Ellie have early on in the game do better character building than the whole back half of the game. Like the moment at the music store where Ellie finds the guitar. Yeah. That is like the mixture. Like, first of all, shout out to Naughty Dog for being the only first party Sony studio still doing all the fiddly motion control and touchpad stuff. Because I insta rage quit the game when I was like, your flashlight's like, shake the controller. I'm like, but like the guitar aspect with the touchpad, like, it's super corny and everything else, but still so beautiful. It's like, strum this chord, strum this chord, strum this chord, and now these chords make up this song, and then it goes into a musical moment. And
you know what that tapped in for me? Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask. They would play around with stuff like that, and then it was like really cool. Like, shout out to them for doing that, because
it was cool. Yeah, I love the way that was done.
That was really well done, and like, Dina was just an all-around really well-written character. I don't know, there was just something about a lot of these characters, and like, even with the complaints I have with a lot of these characters, all of them felt insanely human. Like, none of these people were making perfect decisions. And like, I told Sam, I said, it's really brilliant in the fact that they found a way to make Ellie's girlfriend pregnant, even though they're in a lesbian relationship, and that is a storytelling point. I'm like, it's a brilliant loop around way, because it's not something you'd ever expect. You're like, this is Ellie's girlfriend, and then they're like, oh well, Ellie's girlfriend's pregnant, and you're like, I must protect.
Just in general, I think, and that's why I think exploring Seattle is one of my favorite parts of the game early on, like the early section where you're on horseback, because the synagogue, just there's no enemies, just you making your way through, Dina talking about her heritage, talking about her family. Like, when I first booted up the game, and you first get to talking, I was like, okay, all right, she's that girl. We've all known that flirt in our, tearing through all your friends one after another. Fine. And then you realize there's actually a lot of depth to her. There's actually almost this sense that she treats things very casually because she's scared to connect. but then you actually get to see that drawn out of her. Like, yeah, the dialogue and the performances are fantastic. They're fantastic. Shout out to Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson in that final flashback when they're talking, just reducing me to tears because they did.
Did you guys? I don't know. Did you guys go and watch any of the kind of funny Spoilercast?
I've watched some of it. I haven't finished it, but I did watch some.
It's riveting for the fact that they're talking about these scenes, and you just see Ashley like tearing up, and then you see Troy like I'm like, that's amazing that chemistry, because it comes across like for real. And you know what? And I want to flick knuckleheads in the face for saying like, oh my God, Dina's so ugly. I'm like, are you out of your mind?
Yeah, what? No, you're legitimately insane. You're legitimately insane if you say that.
Just internet. Chill for a
minute. Maybe it's because I have daughters and everything else. Maybe that's why I see it differently. But like, I look at this game and it's full of women that are surviving the worst period of the lifetime. And it's like when if you read historically about like frontier women and how they adapted and survived and everything else, is that people at their core, we're humans at our core, whether we're male or female, and our ability to survive is based off of our own desire to thrive and find our own way to live our best lives. Whether we accomplish that or not is based on who we are as people. But literally, like through all of this, all of these people, you realize they're just trying to get by. Even with the small interactions with Maria and everything else, this is a woman that's married to Tommy. Like, good luck with that, sweetheart. Like, and like, I don't know. It's really realistic. It's so funny that some of the criticisms are like, oh, the performances feel flat. I've got problems with how the story planned out, but I don't have problems with how it was performed. And I know I said I had problems with the flashbacks, but I feel like I have to touch on this. That whole scene in the museum with the spaceship with Joel and Ellie, I was blubbering like a baby. I ain't got no problem with that. Like, that is what a father would try to do for his daughter on her birthday in a post-apocalyptic world. Like, how many clickers did he have to kill to get that tape? Like, I want a freaking flashback of that. Where he's dragging Tommy through some hell-bent place, and he's like, where are we looking for? And he comes out, he's like, tape cassette.
And Tommy's like, come here, bro. Come here.
but that's what I mean. Is like, I found, like what Sam said, DLC with Tommy and Joel and seeing how they interact more would be really interesting, because Tommy still feels kind of like a wild card character that could have been delved into more. I wish he had actually spent more time with the group as a whole in Ellie's portion of the game to an extent, because I kind of want to know him more. It was the same thing with Jesse. I really like Jesse as a character, because he literally threw everything. Like, him and Dina broke up. He knew Ellie and Dina were a thing, and he still threw everything away because they were his friends at the core of everything. He threw away all the safety and everything because he was like, I've got to look after my own, period, end of story. And he
said he looked up to Joel, you know?
Yeah. And like, that's the thing, is like, at the end of the day, like, these were really, really, really real characters. But I don't know. There's just so many. It's very rare. Very few games have that one moment where you're like, wow. You get that like really emotional feel in your chest. But there was a couple in this game. And for the things they missed, they made up for it for the things they hit. If that makes any sense at all, is because like for every moment where I was like, oh, really? There's a moment like 2 hours later where I'm like, no, you're a bitch. But, and like the little jabs too that they threw in there, like, you know, we've seen people sit there and tirade against Naughty Dog for politics and games and everything. One of the tiniest little jabs that I thought was so clever was them walking through a coffee shop and there was a pride flag, and Dina goes, wonder what the rainbow flag's for. And I'm like, I get that reference. But I just thought it was overall, it was a great game. The gameplay led the way for me. There was plot holes here and there, and a little missteps in some of the pacing. But overall, it's one of the best games I've played this generation as a whole. And I can safely say that it'll probably round out be in my top 5 of this generation, just on the performances, the gameplay, and just the story. Now, to close out this spoiler cast, I've got to ask you guys one question. Do you want a part 3?
Okay. Let me, while the others think, I'll go ahead because I already know the answer.
I get it.
As I said, I want a DLC with Tommy and Joel, or even like a small spin-off game. If you do it Lost Legacy style, then then we're gonna make that a thing. Then fine, do that. I want that. I want that story.
Yeah.
And I want more of this universe. I do not want The Last of Us Part 3. I think, I feel the way I do about the ending, and I'm not happy about the way it ended. But I accept that it ended, and I think that
you, Sam, until you on Twitter, I'm gonna browbeat you to see it my way.
you have to get out of Florida first.
No, I can go to the airport. I can drive.
Good luck escaping Ground Zero. But like that, yeah, I want that story, and I want more of this world. But I think Ellie's story is done.
Yes,
100%. Where do you go from there? I think it's
can't.
Good enough, it's good enough to think she's got things to figure out. I don't need to see how she figures them out. Unless they do some wild thing where they move it way into the future and she's like a Maria. But even then, it's like...
I feel like you're flirting with disaster at that point. Like, just maybe, you know what? I mean, I think I have my idea of what's going to happen. I think she's going to go back to Jackson, try to talk some sense into Tommy, try to make it up to Dina, help Maria run the camp now. But that's my idea, and I don't need to see that. I don't need to see that realized.
It's enough to make up your own thing.
Yeah. I don't need to see the awkward conversation that'll happen between Dina and Ellie. I really don't want to see that conversation. It's going to be a lot of throwing things and yelling, and that's no. As someone who said the first game didn't need a sequel, I think they did a second one brilliantly. I don't think they can pull a third one out of the hat. And I think that's why not killing Abby, book corners that they're not. Because if they had killed Abby and let Lev live, I was like, oh boy, here we go again, another cycle of hatred. But they stopped it. They physically stopped it. So I just don't see how they could go forward. Like with Uncharted, we sit there and we go, oh, well, Nate's kids could take over and all this other stuff. There's so many places they could go with Uncharted. With The Last of Us, I think we're good for this set of characters. Don't abandon the universe. I agree with Sam in that. It's a beautifully crafted universe, but just...
Jared, what about you?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So I definitely think they shouldn't be Last of Us Part 3. They shouldn't continue afterwards. But what I really, really want to see is what the early days of Joel's life was with the Fireflies. And the start of all this infections and how the Fireflies started, and then WLF and all that kind of stuff flamed up during the height of the infection period. Because we all started the first Last of Us started with, how his daughter died and the whole infection thing and how that all started off in a small town, and it was really chaotic. I wanted to revisit back to that point in time and really truly tell how it affected the whole world, because we really know how it affected the United States in certain sections of it and all that kind of fun stuff, but I really want to know more in depth of how it originated.
Mm-hmm.
Well, see, Canada built a wall. It's actually only the United States.
I'm not talking about the ice wall yet, man.
No. Could you imagine the twist in The Last of Us is the fact that it's just the United States? Everywhere else is normal. Everyone's just like, what's going on down there?
I'm with Jared on that because in a lot of these scenarios, and like when you're dealing with like pandemic and zombies or whatever, clickers and this and that, you don't always get the answer as to like how it happened, like what caused it. And I know you can make the argument that, The Last of Us is another zombie game. I don't necessarily agree with that sentiment because I think clickers and everything are so much more interesting than just your normal zombie. And then the spores and they look like vegetation almost. Like, what is this? Was it biochemical? Is it like alien in nature? What is it? I think diving into that could be really cool. But as far as the third game, I'm with you guys. Like, I don't need to see any more of Ellie's story. I don't need to see any more of Abby's story. I have the things in my head that I think will be good enough for where they go and what they do. I would absolutely be open to the Tommy and Joel thing. Hell, I want to know more about Dina's old partner that had the stroke.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Who had the grow house.
No.
Shout out to that dude. I have never in my life known a Eugene who couldn't hook you up. Like, that is the most stoner name in the history of names.
Yeah, Eugene. Yeah, exactly. It's like Eugene, of course.
As soon as they were like, "Oh, what's that light down there?" I'm like, "The dude's name's Eugene. It's either moonshine or it's weed." I'm not even kidding you. My best friend growing up, his dad was like 60 years old. His name was Eugene, and all he did was make moonshine in his backyard. Like, that's just the kind of thing you get with a Eugene.
But I'm 100% open to the Tommy and Joel thing. I'm 100% open to them exploring, maybe doing like a little more of like a horror game that deals more with those moments that we got with Abby. Because also too, we didn't touch on this, and the reason I kind of said Abby's vulnerable is because I felt for her when she's dealing with the heights, going across those bridges and stuff. And
yeah, me too.
You look down and you don't see anything but fog, and it's like, oh my God. I literally felt the anxiety of it. I'm like, because I don't know if I could do it, because I do have I'm not completely afraid of heights, but extreme heights, I'm like, eugh. So yeah, I was feeling that, man. And I felt that vulnerability. And, and Lev is just like cartwheeling across the bridge and like, hey.
No.
I'm like, would you stop it?
Yeah. No, I'm with you, Eric. Like, zombie apocalypse, fine. I know how to handle a gun. I've done basic survival stuff. I feel like I wouldn't be comfortable, but I might be able to pull something out of my ass and maybe survive the first couple of days. But if you're like, hey, the only way we're surviving is crossing a skyscraper on a rickety wooden bridge, I'm like,
well, Yara.
Oh well.
Win some, you lose some.
We'll wrap this up, but the final and scariest moment of this game was the introduction of the scars by a long shot, because you're sitting there, you're going through the park, and you hear whistling, and you're like, okay. And then the arrow whistles and hits you square in the chest. I literally fell out of my chair at 3 o'clock in the morning and probably woke my neighbors up.
I dropped my controller. I was like, oh my God, no.
And then you're sitting there and you're like trying to pull the arrow out, and they're like right there, and you're like,
it literally just hit the fan.
And that, I think the best part about the scars introduction is, like, in Abby's story, you're like, oh, these are the people we fight all the time. These are the people that we deal with all the time. In Ellie's story, you're like, what the fuck are these guys? They're bald, they're in robes. What the?
3 things I don't like.
They have. And that's the funny thing too. I kind of laugh that people are so up. I won't say up in arms, no pun intended, about Abby. And I'm like, but nobody has anything to say about these big chicks who look exactly like the male brutes carrying the fire pickaxes. I'm like, they're the same size, the same.
No. 7 feet tall. Like,
right.
All because of roaming around people. Come on.
All of those girls were named Gertrude. I do not. You can't convince me otherwise.
Gertrude or Bertha. Oh, but we can't close out without talking about this because Sam and I actually briefly talked about it. How awesome was the end with Haven? Haven being on fire. And
yes,
screaming like being a traitor, and you also have Seraphites coming at you. And how nasty was it? You're fighting that dude. I don't know what he was hopped up on.
The mouth. I couldn't do the mouth when it started flapping.
Oh man!
How brilliant was it? Twisting around, twisting the head of the pull the arrow out mechanic, and it's the same thing, but you're pulling the arrow out of him instead. Like that whole thing was great because you know what it was? That was an Uncharted set piece, except it's no. This isn't Nathan Drake being a badass and wisecracking and making jokes with Sully. This is hell on earth. These people are ripping each other apart. Mm-hmm. And that was like it was awesome in spectacle. But unlike those other famous Naughty Dog set pieces, I was like, good God, the horror that has been unleashed here.
Yeah.
That you're absolutely right. Thank you for bringing that up, Eric. Because
that was such a great portion of that game, man. And it's just because, and then too, like with like Lev and Yara, did you guys think like both would make it out, just one, or neither of them?
I honestly, when we got in the boat, there's that moment where the guy's executing the person with the rifle. I half expected him to turn around and shoot Lev in the head. I was waiting for it. I was like, they're going to do him dirty. There's no way this kid makes it off the island. Kid survived the whole last game. I was counting down the moments. I'm like,
it's crazy. It's like the Seraphites. I'm like, he shaved his head. That's a punishable by death offense. That's crazy, right?
Well, the whole context of that is because he's a girl that shaving his head was because of the religious cultism of it.
But it's still absurd. It's still horrifying.
We're going to execute you because you shaved your head. And I'm sitting there like, a little tighter.
I mean, God, there's so much I can talk about. Things I like or things I dislike. I can talk about this game for hours.
We could almost do another spoiler cast just to talk about the piece we didn't get to.
Like we could literally talk about Flappy Jaw's freaking flapping gum mechanics.
It's like
no. Part of that fight is the multiple times you thought you killed him.
Yeah,
and he just keeps like when you put the sickle into the mouth and tore across him, like, oh, he's dead, and then he's like, and you're like,
what is this guy on, man?
You know how I joke about, he's on the good stuff. He ain't on the good stuff. He's on the bad stuff. I don't know what it was.
Like, where did Isaac find this guy, man? Because he's like, wow.
This dude was on what they call the Southern Alabama cocktail of crystal methamphetamines and whiskey.
Hell of a drug, man. Just saying.
Yeah, no kidding. So appreciate all the listeners that are going to check out the Spoilercast. This will be up on Spotify the day after it airs on YouTube, so it should be up on Spotify tomorrow. I appreciate these guys lending me their time and talking about this game. As we've evolved and shown, there's still tons of stuff to talk about with this game. And there's always going to be conversations about this game. I expect more of these conversations will come up. Unfortunately, in November, December time period, when the Game Awards start happening, there's going to be the discourse.
I can't wait.
Let's just put it out there, all right? Cyberpunk 2077 already has the crown.
Except it's not applicable for this year's Game Awards.
Oh, come on.
So, yeah, Discourse. Great. I love Discourse. So, we will do outros, I guess. Sam, where can people find your hot The Last of Us takes?
Yeah, you can find you find me on Twitter, unfortunately, at Samuel Talbert, and then you can find everything I write on Windows Central, Android Central, and iMore. And if you wanted to hear more, like, since we're shamelessly self-promoting ourselves, about what I didn't like about the ending, I go in way more depth in a recent article I wrote. You can find it on my Twitter timeline.
I will also be linking that article in the Spotify description, so make sure you look for that. Now that we've done the Spoilercast, I'm going to go run and read that and tell Sam how wrong he is. Not really. There's a disclaimer for Dishonored and Avatar, so The Last Airbender, so I don't know. It's got to be amazing at this point. I got to read it.
It's a really good read.
It is a good read.
It's Sam. I know it's a good read. Jared, where can people find you?
Well, people can find me on Twitter at RageVirus_X. You can also find all my fun writing stuff over at LordsGaming.net and my hopefully soon to be upcoming YouTube channel, The Neon Garden. But we'll see how things play out with YouTube and their antics.
Yeah, and also people should go check out. Jared just did a PC preview piece on Mortal Shell,
My goodness.
which is a Dark Souls-like game, which makes me want to hit myself in the dick with a hammer. So Jared wrote a really great preview piece about it, and he really enjoyed it, and it was fun to edit. So I definitely implore you to go and check that out. Eric, where can people find you?
Oh yeah, you can, much like in The Walking Dead, find me dealing with a crazy governor who. That's about a pandemic. Trying to survive here in Florida, but other than that, you can find me on Twitter, EC Jackson with an X. And when I'm not with you, gentlemen, I'm on Brat Podcast Wednesdays at 9:00.
Don't worry, Florida. Don't worry, Eric. I'll drive down to Florida. We'll get some moonshine and we'll grab shotguns and we'll make it out of here, buddy.
Seriously, man.
Crazy times we live in. I'm Nicholas Downey. You can find me on Twitter at Undead3XVI. You can follow me for all your quick cooking tutorials and everything else. You can find all my written work at lordsofgaming.net. And of course, if you want to see more of these guys and more of what I do, you can subscribe to us on YouTube at The Gaming Perspective. You can also find us on Spotify under The Gaming Perspective. We do not have a custom URL yet because Spotify customer support sucks. Respond to my emails. But as always, all our episodes are available on Spotify 24 hours after publishing now. And we appreciate all the support we get, and there'll be some new things coming. We've got a Prey retrospective episode planned for after this. I'm just capturing the footage and finishing up that game right now. And that'll be a fun little discussion too. So expect more bonus perspectives going forward. And don't worry, with the Prey one, you guys won't have to look at our faces. I'm going to have gameplay and stuff for that one. So you guys won't have to look at us and my hillbilly ass. So hope you guys enjoyed the show. You can check us out tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, for a regular episode of the Gaming Perspective Gaming Perspective Podcast, where we talk about the latest industry news, sales, and hot takes, of course. Well, they're lukewarm at best, but we enjoy ourselves. So thank you guys for tuning in. Appreciate all the support, and we will catch you guys tomorrow for the regular scheduled episode.